will include a blackout drill as well. The focus now seems to be that after the Prime Minister has briefed the cabinet, he will go back then to figure out what's the latest intel coming from Pakistan. How is Pakistan planning to retaliate, if at all? What are international, responses like? What are international media saying? What is it? How is it that the leaders internationally have responded? What is the UN saying about this as well? And on different fronts, diplomatic, military, and those in the public narrative, all those will be tackled with. Like we continue to give you visuals that have come in from over the night of Operation Sindoor from 1:44 a.m. this morning to now, where the cabinet meeting is finally underway. We also now have we're also trying to get you a couple of our colleagues in studio to take you through how exactly is the government responding, what could be some of the sources indicating at this point. Remember, it's a very tight-lipped affair and nobody knew when. Perhaps for the first time we knew that something was going to happen. India would respond. Prime Minister's words were very clear that there will be a vengeance. Badla lenge aur unko sabak sikhayenge. Those were the words, and with that, Operation Sindoor has hit 9 terror camps. The intel at the moment is some 80 terrorists have been killed. We wait on to see what happens next. Also requesting my producers to see if we can get some pictures that have come in. Let's go back to those. Okay, those are the pictures coming in from this morning. The aftermath. Since all of this, you see the roof collapse there. This is again these are parts of PoK, part of those 9 targets which were hit by a joint operation, one that was carried out with great precision. And these are the visuals that came in from earlier in the morning. Now, as you look at those, let's also try and see if we can get another window where we get pictures of what's happening here in the country. So that's Pakistan at the moment. What's happening here in the country is that the cabinet is meeting. The cabinet is meeting at the Prime Minister's residence to discuss further course of action, to take and understand what happened, and then to go ahead and see what will happen next. All right, while we look at those visuals, let's quickly also take you through some of the highlights and the sound bites that have come so far from that press briefing, and also some of the bits that we've been picking up from agencies on how people are actually responding to Operation Sindoor. Quickly, let's take a look at those. All right, so let's look at these visuals now. These are the visuals that came in yesterday from various places, from places like Lucknow, even in North India, on how the drill was actually being carried out. All right, I'm told my colleague Ishan joins us now live from the newsroom as we continue to look at these pictures and the drills that have been carried out. Now, we are showing you step by step what can be done and what should be done once we get into that stage of drill. And remember, like I said, it starts at 4 p.m. today in over 240 districts, in fact, across the country. Now, these are the pictures that came in yesterday on preparedness of various fronts in schools, on the streets, in hospitals. How exactly will this mock drill turn out? What is this for really? This is to ensure that we as citizens are prepared in case there is a retaliation that comes in from Pakistan, something that has been anticipated so far. Now remember, these pictures again, why is it really happening? It all boils down to what happened in Pahalgam, the barbaric way in which men were singled out, people of a particular religion were singled out, and they were hit in the head in the most barbaric, inhuman way in front of their families. And with a message that go and tell it to your government that this is what we're capable of. Now this obviously we knew India will not take lying down, and the response is Operation Sindoor. An operation which has been pretty clear in its messaging right from the name to how it has been presented. Sindoor needs no context, like I had said in the India story. It is for all those women, it is for the mothers, for the wives who had to oversee their husbands, their kids, their family members being shot in front of their eyes only to send out a message. It is dedicated to them. It is to ensure that, justice is served. But unlike any other attack or any other escalation of tension between India and Pakistan that we have seen over several decades, this one is different. This is not the surgical strike. After 71, this is the maximum escalation we have seen between the two countries, and that makes it extremely significant. What happens next is anybody's guess, but India is meaning to be prepared. India will also watch out for those pictures I understand are coming in from Jammu and Kashmir, where there seems to be very heavy police and security presence on the ground to see what happens. All the border states will particularly be more protected to see what's happening over there. And of course, there has been disruption in flights as well. If we can just pick up some of those details that have come in, 3 major airlines since morning have sent out details on what should be looked into. Let me just say that for our viewers. Air India, flights to Jammu, Srinagar, Leh, Jodhpur, Amritsar, Bhuj, Jamnagar, Chandigarh and Rajkot have been cancelled. SpiceJet, airports in Dharamshala, Leh, Jammu, Srinagar, Amritsar are closed until further notice. Now that means there will be no incoming and outgoing of flights on these airports. Let me repeat that for our viewers and would urge our producers to put them out as supers and graphics as well for in the public interest here. Airports in Dharamshala, airport at Leh, Jammu, Srinagar, Amritsar are closed until further notice, warning that departures and arrivals and the consequential flights may be impacted as well. In fact, will be impacted. Indigo, another domestic flyer, has said that operations to and fro from Srinagar, Jammu, Amritsar, Leh, Chandigarh and Dharamshala have been affected. Now this is for the next 48 hours we are told so far. Will that go on to be the case? What exactly is the update is what we have to wait and watch for. In fact, in the press briefing, that is the one time we know the details of the strikes and what exactly unfolded with Operation Sindoor, the Foreign Secretary went on to say that since this is still a developing situation, not the end of the story so far, since this is a developing situation, they did not take any questions, but we have to wait to see what actually comes out of here. Also urging all our viewers watching Money Control right now, this is a tense time. And there might also be a lot of misinformation doing the rounds on WhatsApp, on other places. Please do not believe them. Stick to trusted sources to understand what exactly is going on. And we here at Network 18, at Money Control, are trying to bring you all the coverage, all the news stories which have been corroborated by the government and are in your interest as well. All right, my colleague Ishan is now with us live this morning. Afternoon, Ishan. There is so much to decode really on how this is unfolding. Before you joined in, we looked at the pictures that came in from Lok Kalyan Marg, the first cabinet briefing that the Prime Minister has held with his other cabinet colleagues. We saw some smiles there. The Prime Minister clearly happy with the response he's put out so far. Any further details coming out?
Afternoon, Sonal. As far as the details are concerned, we know that the government response has been there. Khwaja Asif, the Pakistan minister, has said that we are ready to talk with India if they back down. Right. In with regards to what you were talking about, how this has panned out and how this may pan out, we have an interesting analysis here as far as defense spending is concerned. So usually, whenever escalations go up between the two countries, defense spending from Pakistan tends to go up. Now, as you know, a few days ago, Pakistan said that they're going to increase their defense expenditure by around 18%. Now, this comes over and above another 20% hike that happened in last year's budget. So Pakistan is going to spend more on defense, that's for sure, as tensions keep on rising. And it has done so in the past as well. Look at 2016 when the attacks happened. 7.3% was what's Pakistan spent on defense over the previous year. Now, in 2017, that almost doubled to 14.1%, and then it rose to 17.5%, which was the highest in about 5 years. Similarly, if you look at 2009, suddenly the spending from Pakistan military expenditure went up by 17.1% in that 1 year alone, went up to 18.1% the following year. So there's this pattern that continues where Pakistan spends a lot when this happens. Now, from a Pakistan perspective, it becomes very problematic because they are into a very high debt situation as well. So their debt is much higher. You know, they've approached IMF and World Bank for loans, and a $7 billion line is also there from IMF. If you look at from that perspective, Pakistan actually outspends most of the world on defense when it comes to percentage of GDP, and it has done so with India over the last few years. So, from what can happen in the future, one of those things would be to watch how defense spending pans out for Pakistan. India's has been more measured during this period. Back to this.
Right. So this is about defense spending. But Ishan, any further that we know on what happens next at this point? Like I said, the cabinet meeting is underway. We understand that so far India is happy with the response. But if you look at the last statement that was made by the Foreign Secretary, he said this is a developing situation. We also are talking when hours from now, from 4 o'clock onwards, the drills across the country will also begin. What kind of preparedness are we looking at?
So the drills are a very common exercise whenever you're looking at preparedness for any disaster of this sort. So those would go on, and that mock drill exercise would carry on. As far as developments are concerned, we have to look at what the response from Pakistan is. For now, China has called
More
for a more
than
mediated response.
payloads. They carry the dreams of 1.4 billion Indians. India's achievements are significant scientific milestones. Beyond that, they are proof that the human spirit can defy gravity. India made history by reaching Mars on its first attempt in 2014. Chandrayaan 1 helped discover water on the moon. Chandrayaan 2 gave us the highest resolution images of the moon. Chandrayaan 3
यार मेरा कैमरे का लाइट ठीक कराओ.
understanding of the lunar south pole. We built cryogenic engines in a record time. We launched 100 satellites in a single mission. We have launched over 400 satellites for 34 nations on our launch vehicles. This year, we docked 2 satellites in space, a major step forward. Friends, India's space journey is not about racing others. It is about reaching higher together. Together, we share a common goal to explore space for the good of humanity. We launch a satellite for the South Asian nations. Now, the G20 satellite mission announced during our presidency will be a gift to the global South. We continue to march ahead with renewed confidence, pushing the boundaries of scientific exploration. Our first human space flight mission, Gaganyaan, highlights our nation's rising aspirations. In coming weeks, an Indian astronaut will travel to space as part of a joint ISRO-NASA mission to the International Space Stations. By 2035, the Bharatiya Antariksh Station will open new frontiers in research and global cooperation. By 2040, an Indian's footprints will be on the moon. Mars and Venus are also on our radar. Friends, for India, space is about exploration as well as about empowerment. It empowers governance, enhances livelihoods, and inspires generations. From fishermen alerts to Gati Shakti platform, from railway safety to weather forecasting, our satellites look out for the welfare of every Indian. We have opened our space sector to startups, entrepreneurs, and young minds. Today, India has over 250 space startups. They are contributing to cutting-edge advancements in satellite technology, propulsion systems, imaging, and much more. And you know, it is even more inspiring that many of our missions are being led by women scientists. Friends, India's space vision is grounded in the ancient wisdom of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. That is, the world is one family. We strive not just for our own growth, but to enrich global knowledge, address common challenges, and inspire future generations. India stands for dreaming together, building together, and reaching for the stars together. Let us together write a new chapter in space exploration, guided by science and shared dreams for a better tomorrow. I wish you all a very pleasant and productive stay in India. Thank you.
Viewers, why are we not surprised? The Prime Minister is not given to speaking in triumphal terms. He talked about a completely different phase of India's evolution.
The Prime Minister was speaking there not on Operation Sindoor. He was actually talking about India's space development for Mars, Chandrayaan, Gaganyaan, etc. He was reaching out to a global audience. This is perhaps messaging. Not speaking as well is messaging on where the focus of India is. Focus is clearly on developments. Focus also seems to be that this is India's own way of tackling with its neighbor, and perhaps a global commentary is not required. So much to be decoded from what the Prime Minister says and perhaps what he does not in the days and weeks to come. So this is important that is happening at the moment. Prime Minister spoke to a global audience in English about enhancing the space livelihood and employment over there, not speaking about the Operation Sindoor. Global Conference on Space Exploration, we are told. It was a video that was earlier recorded by the Prime Minister. Let me see if I have my colleague Ishan with me and we can go back to him for a couple of details coming in. Ishan, you've been covering the defense sector for quite a while, and I just want to look at it from both India, Pakistan sort of lens at this point. Pakistan's debt situation. And why it's important to talk about it right now is because if we look at escalation from a current, position of Operation Sindoor, what are the possible sort of scenarios that can play out? And mostly its debt situation at the moment compared to how previously they were when we were in a similar escalated situation with Pakistan. How do you see it playing out?
So there are some interesting comparisons there if you look at it, right? This is the first time that India is attacking Pakistan economically only, with the Indus Water Treaty coming into place, which actually occupies a large part of their economy because of the agriculture involvement to it. So if you look at those scenarios, then Pakistan gets into a very tricky situation. Two, India is pressuring the IMF and the World Bank also not to extend their credit lines to Pakistan. IMF has promised about $7 billion. World Bank has about $50 billion worth of projects running with the country. So if you look at all these scenarios, then Pakistan gets into a very tricky situation, because if it gets into bilateral loans or non-Paris Club members other than US and others, the interest rates are very high that it gets compared to what it gets from IMF or World Bank, which are very low interest rate loans. So the debt ramp up gets very high, and this comes at a time when Pakistan economy is already experiencing high debt, very high interest payments, and little economic growth. Now, if you look at Moody's ratings, they came out with a report very recently where they pointed out that this would have an adverse impact on the Pakistani economy, because they were right now on the path to recovery. They were doing better. You remember those Imran Khan times when people were literally on streets fighting for everything. Even inflation today in Pakistan is very high. So from that perspective, it would get very difficult. Now, I think you have a chart on your screen which shows you how Pakistan's defense spending goes up. Right. If you look at it, 2001, right after the parliament attacks and 2000 terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, defense spending just shoots up. Right. Similar thing happens in 2009 as well. It just shoots up. So every time there's an escalation, Pakistan ends up spending more on defense, less on other things. When you compare it to India, India spends about 2% on average on defense. Pakistan is spending about 2.3, 2.4%. At one point of time, it was spending even over 3% if you look at prior to the pandemic period. And if you compare it to the world, Pakistan outspends the world also. You leave out Russia, Ukraine, and other economies, and Pakistan is at about 2.8% of GDP is what they spend. India spends about 2.4. Other low-income, middle-income countries spend about 1.8 or 2. So from that perspective, the moment the defense spending goes up, which usually does when escalations rise, Pakistan would have a very difficult time to survive. India, on the other hand, is performing much better with its economic activity doing better. Manufacturing PMI was up, which is at 58.2%. So it's a very difficult time for the Pakistani economy also to recover. Also, to the Prime Minister's point, I think what Prime Minister is also mentioning here is that it's very business as usual kind of scenario for India. They don't want that hyphenation of India, Pakistan again. We have moved past Pakistan. Until 2000, our economy and Pakistan economy was comparable. Actually, Pakistan did better than us on GDP per capita. Now, if you look at it, it's very different from that perspective. So you can't compare those two economies again and say, okay, fine, this is the case. So from that perspective, I think Pakistan is in a lot of trouble there in terms of economic impact of what it should have. Back to you.
All right. Economic impact there as well being discussed. But Ishan, I want to stick around with you and ask you a couple of more questions when it comes to how this is going to unfold. And I'm just trying to check if I have my colleague Nandita join us from Mumbai as well, just to see the impact of how this is playing out in the stock market as well. Let me just try and quickly see if we have her. But while we do that, Ishan, at this point, we are looking at preparedness. We are looking at economy to back that preparedness. and whether or not these claims and the response that we've seen from Pakistan is to be given any precedence. Now, internationally speaking, if I can just indulge you a little bit on the response that we've got, the only response we have so far in terms of a soundbite is from President Trump. He went on to say that, oh, we expected something to happen, now it has. These countries have been at it for a while. Apart from that, several other countries is our sense to understand that they have taken a position, or this is to be dealt with the two countries and between the two countries alone?
I think it's a very transactional world. If you look at Mr. Trump also, it's very transactional as far as these relations are concerned. So I don't expect trade to be impacted much, except for some impact on tourism in terms of airlines going around Pakistan rather than going straight. But in terms of trade, there might not be much impact on this escalating conflict. Also, if you look at the Kargil part of things, IMF at the start of Kargil war in May actually predicted that Indian economy would grow at around 5.5%. Now, in October, after Kargil war had taken place, the Indian growth was not impacted at all. Actually, we grew at 5.7, and our final growth rate was 6.8% in that year. Even Pakistan economy did not get affected as much. So a lot depends on how the conflict takes place, whether it's contained or not, and if it's contained, how much containment is there. I don't think so either of the economies want a war-like situation, because war is not good. You look at consumer sentiment, that would go down, people would start holding cash a lot. So that is something that you would want to avoid in all scenarios. As far as the Indian economy part of it is concerned, I think the domestic economy is driving everything, because despite the fact that US is supposed to see a recession and China is doing badly in terms of growth, and even European Union is expected to see a huge dip in growth, Indian economy is actually braving this storm of tariffs as well. So another storm, yes, it would affect, but not by that much, because our domestic economy is doing very strong at the moment. And that is supporting a lot of our economic activity. So from preparedness and all perspective, I think preparedness would keep on continuing. Again, it falls in Pakistan's court. But as far as Indian economy is concerned, I think that is on a very strong footing as of now.
Yeah, no doubts about that at all. But Ishan, can I ask you about the cost of an escalated tension between India and Pakistan? I mean, we're looking at an era where there are wars taking place, across the globe in different, in different parts as well. Enough has been spoken about it. We've seen how those played out without naming, without comparison at all. Is what exactly for a layman at the moment is the cost that for some of those who are warmongering right now would this lead to?
See, the problem is once you start a war-like situation, the thing that happens is your tourism dies out, right? So a lot of those tourist economies that you are supporting would go out, and that would be a problem for India, because it was really looking at becoming a tourist hub. Also, a lot of investments also get impacted. Now your next companies would start thinking, should I invest in India with a war-like situation? Should that be a call I need to take right now? Also, consumers don't spend as much, because a regular consumer would always think that this would impact my spending. I don't know what's going to happen a few days from now, so should I buy that next stock? Is that worth buying? So from that perspective, from the economy perspective, it affects on those fronts. So warmongering, it's fine, but what happens to our Viksit Bharat goal after that? We want to become a developed economy. So I think you need to iron out those priorities. But of course, if there is a retaliation from the other side, how much more can you take and what more can you do is the question.
All right, Ishan, we leave it there for the moment. Thank you so much for joining us with all that perspective. That's our colleague Ishan joining us from the newsroom. We'll also be joined very shortly from now with our colleague Aman, who covers the Prime Minister's office for the network as well. We'll leave it there for the moment. Ishan, thanks so much for joining us. But what is the latest that we have for you at the moment? Now, let me just break down for you the entire timeline of events that have happened. At 1:44 a.m. this morning, we had Operation Sindoor start out. In 25 minutes, 9 targets were hit out. And post that, we have seen escalation, we have seen reactions come in. At 10:30 then this morning, we had, before that there was a press release that came out. And then at 10:30 this morning, we had the Foreign Secretary come out with a detailed explanation. A detailed explanation of why these strikes took place, where these strikes took place, and on whom these strikes took place. He went on in detail along with his other female colleagues to talk about where all India has hit, what was the intel behind it, and why the reason even and the opportunity actually arose. Post that, we have also seen a cabinet meeting. There was first a CCS meeting held at the local Yanmarg at the Prime Minister's residence in the national capital, and post that there have been a cabinet discussion as well. A cabinet meeting which I'm now told is over. We saw some pictures of that come in earlier. Prime Minister holding that with his cabinet colleagues. There were some smiles exchanged as well, perhaps happy with the response that has come in so far. Aman Sharma now joins us now with the very latest. Aman, good afternoon. Quite a morning, one wherein we are all trying to understand what is happening at the moment. And when the Foreign Secretary ended his press conference saying this is a developing situation, we can't speak much, and we are at the cusp of another mock drill happening in the country in just a couple of hours from now, how are we to understand this?
Sonal, I'm not able to hear your question, but I think your question is, I think, around this. So I will just give you a brief overview on what the Indian government's planning has been about Operation Sindoor. So, see, this operation has been in the making for the last 2 weeks. We all know that a fortnight it has been in the making. What has really happened is that India has done a very, very well planned, I think a very well structured, and this is the biggest surgical strike which has happened across the border. This is much bigger than Uri. This is much bigger than what happened after Pulwama, the Balakot strikes. The Uri counter strike was on us 2 to 3 launch pads. In the Balakot strike, we went a bit deeper when we destroyed a Jaish camp. But this time, within 25 minutes, 9 strikes, 21 targets, and the headquarters of the two biggest terror organizations, Jaish-e-Mohammed in Bahawalpur, which is deep inside Pakistan, and the headquarters of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, Muridke, which is near Lahore. Both these headquarters have been completely demolished. And there is now reports coming in that Maulana Masood Azhar, who's the head of the Jaish-e-Mohammed, may have lost many family members in this particular strike. So this is also a very, very big development. It was considered unheard of that India could strike at Muridke, which is just at a stone's throw distance from Lahore. Yeah, and Bahawalpur is in fact deep inside Pakistan. So obviously these are very, very big strikes, and the final casualties we'll only know maybe in a few hours, maybe by tomorrow. Once Pakistan comes out with the number, India comes out with an approximate number, but the casualties are very, very high. What India is essentially saying is that, look, Lashkar-e-Toiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed are proscribed terror organizations globally. Why are their headquarters being allowed to function complete impunity inside Pakistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir? Why has Pakistan not acted against them? India has direct evidence that these particular targets we have hit, the terrorists of Pahalgam, and even before, the terrorists which came for Pulwama, the terrorists which came for 26/11 like Ajmal Kasab and David Coleman Headley, have been trained at centers like the center of Lashkar-e-Toiba near Lahore, or at Bahawalpur of the Jaish. So why is over the years, despite being given evidence, has Pakistan not acted against these particular these centers? That is the biggest question that India is asking, and India is citing this as a defense to go after what I would say earlier. The strikes were on the tributaries of terror. I could say the flow of terrorists which used to come in India, attack them, their launch pads. Now we have gone against the fountainhead of terror. We are trying to turn the tap off. We are saying that we will put an end to Pakistan-sponsored terror for good, and that is why we have gone deep inside Pakistan. As I said, within 25 minutes, between 1:05 a.m. and 1:30 p.m., such kind of precision strikes, on various launch pads, various camps of the terror organizations, is unprecedented. terror plots against India do not raise their head and terror is impeded. That is all which India is trying to do here. And India has clearly said that if Pakistan retaliates to this, in fact, that will be the escalatory act to which India is very well prepared to respond to.
Right. Aman, a lot of things have happened post the Operation Sindoor as well. We see the Prime Minister cancel his three-country tour. We see no response from him just yet, but perhaps a recorded message that played out earlier talking about India's space infrastructure and how that's building up. How is this likely to play out politically? Aman, if you can hear me.
Yeah, your question is not very audible to me, but I'll still, I'll also point to this briefing which has just happened. Very important points made there in that briefing by India's Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri ji. And very important, Sonal, the messaging from this briefing, you have two women officers on stage.
Yes.
So this is Operation Sindoor, in which there's two women officers, one Muslim, one Hindu. So it's very, this messaging by India is very, very specific here. The Operation Sindoor, the name has also been coined and approved by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We can tell our viewers that, this is a word, this is an operation. The word signifies, that the attack on the people in Pahalgam, especially on the husbands, the newlywed, couples, the husbands were attacked, fathers were attacked, deliberately attacked, and the women who were not touched and not harmed were told to take this message back to Mr. Modi. So this was a reply by India that, in Hindu traditions, the sindoor of the woman was wiped off by these terrorists, and India is avenging the murder, the cold-blooded terrorist murder of these 26 Indian innocent tourists who were gunned down in Pahalgam, and the dastardly manner in which they were gunned down is also something that India is pointing it out, that this is a strike which was clearly aimed at destabilizing our economy, destabilizing Kashmir, which has been a big tourism story in the last few years. These figures that have been given to us, about 23 million tourists visiting Kashmir last year. Of course, this is to set a scaremongering, amongst the tourists as well. So India is clearly saying that, look, we had to avenge this. You can't kill 26 innocent tourists in Kashmir and get away with it. So India will avenge it, and that is the message Vikram Misri was also giving in his briefing, which has been held today. And they did not take any questions, but I think nothing was left to imagination. Vikram Misri very clearly saying that, this had to be avenged, and we have done what we had to do. We have done a strike which has not targeted either Pakistani civilians nor any Pakistani military establishment. We have only targeted terror infrastructure inside Pakistan. If Pakistan had acted even within the last fortnight to shut down this terror infrastructure on its soil, India may not have needed to do this. But we saw that Pakistan, instead of shutting down terror infrastructure on its soil, was going on global forums, was going to different countries and raising non-issues with them, raising Kashmir at the UN, causing for a closed-door meeting. It was not addressing the root cause, which is Pakistan-sponsored terror against India. And India has credible evidence that these terrorists who carried out this dastardly Pahalgam strike were Pakistanis or people trained in Pakistan for this particular attack. And the training of these particular terrorists goes back, Sonal, to these particular terrorist centers, which we have now demolished and which we have now risen to the ground. The Prime Minister...
Aman, what strikes me about these 9 targets, that it is not just Jaish, it is not just the LET. It is not just those who took responsibility and what our intelligence says are the people behind Pahalgam. This seems to be an avenge that has been taken against several of these outfits. India has gone all out. This is not just about Pahalgam. This is a message loud and clear to say that, and that, that video that was played before the Foreign Secretary went out to speak, starting from what happened all the way from 91 to now, then to 26/11, then to Pathankot, to several other of those from 2019 to 2025 now. This is an answer to all of them. And India wants to send out a message that this and no more.
Absolutely. That video ends with that, no more. So it shows that, right from the time, the parliament attack, the various terror strikes we've seen, the Pathankot airbase attack, the Uri attack, the Pulwama attack, the Pahalgam attack. Now, India has constantly been suffering from this Pakistan-sponsored terror. Yes, after the Mumbai 26/11 attacks, we had the opportunity. Our armed forces were ready to avenge the attack by attacking Pakistan, but the then government, the then UPA government, did not choose that path for reasons best known to them. This is not the case with the Modi government. Modi government gave a long rope to Pakistan. Mr. Modi even went to Pakistan to meet Nawaz Sharif, the then Prime Minister, and tried to mend things. But what we got in answer was the Pathankot terror attack, the airbase attack. And even in that, we entertained a Pakistani investigation team here, Sonal, which came here and investigated, but never gave us any report. And never even replied to a letter rogatory. So this whole charade that Pakistan always plays out, that we'll get an impartial probe done, we stand for an independent investigation. When that chance was given in 2016 by India, by the Modi government to Pakistan to do that probe, nothing came out of it. So I think India, by targeting the targets it has targeted right now, the list which has been given, you are right, it does not pertain just to the Pahalgam attack. It's a long history of terrorist attacks on India, and India is saying now that yes, after Uri we busted your launch pads, after Pulwama, we went after a main center of the Jaish, a training camp of the Jaish in Balakot. But now we want to end Pakistan-sponsored terror for good. We want to put an end to the tap. And that is why we've carried out such a comprehensive strike. And, as I said, the Prime Minister's words in that Patna rally soon after the Pahalgam attack, when he said that आतंकियों की बची कुची जमीन को भी अब खत्म करने का समय आ गया है. So that's, I think, words have rung true in this particular terror strike which India has carried out on terrorists in Pakistan, because India says that we have to put an end to it. There are still plots being hatched against India from these very terrorist centers, which we have intelligence to materialize in the near future, and that is why it's not only important to get justice for the Pahalgam victims, but also to stop and put an end to future terror plots against India.
So would that be fair, Aman, at this point to say that unlike 2016 Uri surgical strikes, unlike the 2019 Balakot airstrikes, this is perhaps, Operation Sindoor is perhaps the most expansive cross-border strike conducted by India in since 91 when we went on an all-out war? Is that the way to look at it?
I think absolutely. After the Kargil conflict, which was also localized on the line of control in Kashmir, and also some part of it came to IB in the Jammu region. But I think this is definitely the biggest surgical strike India has carried out in Pakistan. To the manner in which within 25 minutes you have precise intelligence. This time, Sonal, interestingly, the government has also provided visual evidence of the bombs actually falling at the target sites.
Yes.
The huge puff of smoke you're seeing clearly seems like drone footage or satellite footage, where India has captured to also shut the mouths of those even within India and the opposition parties who keep asking that where is the evidence of the damage? Have you really hit Balakot? We had those voices. So I think the government, you have to look at the planning. 14 days have gone into it. The Prime Minister met all the three service chiefs, the NSA, the CDS and the Raksha Mantri last Tuesday, exactly a week ago, when he had given operational freedom to all the three agencies to go ahead and choose the response, the timing and the targets. Subsequently, he met all the three chiefs separately also over the last 1 week. The Army Chief on last Wednesday, then the Navy Chief on Saturday, and the Air Force Chief on Sunday, where I believe the targets and the plan was laid out before the PM and was approved. Finally, Sonal, I would also give you the backstory that this whole mock drill story which the government has given, that there'll be mock drills, was, I think, a bit of diversion for the media to focus all day on the mock drills.
I see.
Pakistan to also focus that maybe India is doing a mock drill, it will come with an attack after the mock drill is over. They were maybe caught napping yesterday, because I think nobody expected that India would go and attack Pakistan last night when the mock drill was today. We were apparently preparing for a retaliatory strike from Pakistan with the mock drill. But I think Mr. Modi has managed to blindside Pakistan completely in this. We are all in the media yesterday have been running the mock drill from morning till evening. So Pakistan is also watching our news channels to get a sniff of what really India is up to. So I think this speaks of the stealth and the surprise factor that the Modi government has. Yesterday was a busy day. Mr. Modi had multiple meetings. He was at a media event late evening from 8 p.m. He got back to his home around 10 p.m. And, shortly after 1 a.m., we see the strikes roll out, and Mr. Modi was himself monitoring the entire operation. So this is the government which is on stealth, on surprise factor, takes its enemies by surprise. And after we see that in Uri, we seen that after Pulwama, and I think this strike, the biggest surgical strike, as I'm saying, across the border, we have carried out. Remarkable example of how India has taken even Pakistan by surprise. We were hearing these stories solar from Pakistan for the last 1 week that Pakistan has all-time high readiness. But what happened to it? We have not even crossed the border, and we have shot our missiles from here and hit so targets with ultimate precision and successful strikes, all of them.
Right. So fascinating, the story that you have about why these mock drills. And I remember for our viewers also watching, giving Aman a call to say that this has been publicized so much. Generally, these security activities are not publicized so much. Now, perhaps we understand why that was the case. But I want to spend a minute on the mock drills, Aman, because this is going to impact a lot of lives today. We understand from 4 o'clock onwards, for 5 hours, these drills will be going on. This includes a blackout as well. And specifically for people in Delhi NCR, that means apart from those on the bordering areas where a more extensive, mock drill will take place. Here, that means if there is a blackout, if you're stuck on a particular floor of your, of your building, then you are stuck there. What does that mean, and what details can you share with us on how this will unfold now in light of Operation Sindoor?
Now it's no longer a mock drill, Sonal. I think it's a real drill now. We are in reality expecting a retaliation strike from Pakistan. So it is very much becomes even more serious now, I would say, because people will now realize that, if a strike is coming from Pakistan, or retaliation is coming, India needs to be very well prepared. Sonal, this is ours is a generation which has never seen a war. We are all born after the 1971 war, and Kargil was a big conflict, but limited to Kashmir. It didn't spread to any other part of the country. So we don't really have, maybe not even heard a war siren in our life, or experienced a blackout, or what used to happen when air raids used to happen, and each switch of your house and the curtains have to be switched off. The curtains have to be put. Not a flicker of light has to go out. If there are vehicles on the roads, everybody switches off their headlights and comes to a halt. So all of that, I think the mock drill is also extremely important. People should take it very, very seriously, because if there is a retaliatory strike, God forbid, no. But if Pakistan chooses, to be a bravado to answer maybe its population and do something, of course, India has to be prepared, and especially the people have to be prepared so that nobody panics and does what is the wartime SOPs, their rehearsal and their education of the people about wartime SOPs is very, very important. The government feels, and that is why the mock drill program was kept. I think it becomes even more important today after what has happened early today morning.
Right. Aman, I want to spend some time on the impact of Operation Sindoor. The messaging we've discussed, it's pretty loud and clear, from the name to the people who are talking about it. It's been very out in the open. I think the message is loud and clear, like it was when the terrorists struck our innocent travelers and innocent Indians in Kashmir. But the impact of it, we are told that camps where Kasab, Headley were trained, significance of some of the 10 family members of Masood Azhar who've been killed in these attacks. We are now getting reports as Masood's sister and brother-in-law are amongst those who have been killed. We're also hearing that Lashkar terrorist Kari, Mohammad Iqbal, was also killed in Operation Sindoor. And all of this has now been briefed to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister, perhaps the reason behind those smiles that came in when he was talking to his cabinet colleagues. Is India at this point happy, content with Operation Sindoor, or do you think we've managed to achieve everything that we set out to do?
I think we have achieved a lot of success. That is the word I got from the government early today morning, that all the 9 strikes were successful. So that is what the government is saying, and all these 9 targets and the 21 camps we have targeted in these 9 strikes were very, very carefully chosen over the last 2 weeks, based on hard intelligence, hard observations, human intelligence as well as technical intelligence. We have used that to identify the sites that we have attacked, and the government is satisfied, completely satisfied with the success that has been achieved in these particular strikes. For India, I feel, Sonal, the story is over for now. We feel that we have done what we wanted to achieve. We have achieved that. Now, a lot will depend going forward that what is the significance of Operation Sindoor depends a lot also on what is Pakistan's response. We have just heard the Pakistani Defense Minister Asif Khwaja say to a foreign outlet that if India does not do any further strike, Pakistan will also not retaliate. But this is the Defense Minister of Pakistan speaking, not the Pakistan Army, which calls the shots. And I think Pakistan Army would be feeling very humiliated because people there. We already have some visuals coming of people there asking the Pakistan Army that where were our defenses? India has come and bombed so many of our sites. What was our defense systems doing? So obviously, it's a very very humiliating moment for Asim Munir, the Pakistan Army chief, who's also seen by many in India as the real orchestrator of the Pahalgam terror strike. So though India may have gone after the perpetrators and the handlers, the masterminds of this terror strike are still very much there in Pakistan in the form of the Pakistan Army and the Pakistani Army chief. But the reality also is that the world powers, including the US, don't want India and Pakistan to escalate it further into a full-time conflict. Maybe India also does not want a full-time war. Sonal, our economy is booming, our share market is high. We are
Yes.
just signing a trade deal with the UK yesterday. We're going to sign one with the US very soon. Global supply chain
Aman,
working in the favor.
you spoke about the share markets, and just on cue, I think it's halfway through. We're hitting almost 1 o'clock, and it's a good time to sort of look at how the stock markets are doing. Let me toss across. Let me thank Aman as well for coming in and sharing such great perspectives with us here on Money Control. And now it's time to sort of go back and take a quick check at the markets. My colleague Nandita joins us in Mumbai. Nandita.
Hi Sonal, great to be chatting with you this afternoon. Important day, of course, retaliatory strikes coming in, by India, and a de-escalatory one, targeted precision strikes. And one would have thought that there would be a knee-jerk reaction in the market. It was there at the start of the trading session, but we have done very well to recoup most of the losses. In fact, we have edged back into the green. The volatility has been there, but most experts that I have spoken to have said that it is short term in nature until and unless it escalates further with Pakistan retaliating. The chances are looking a little slim of that, which is why I think markets have factored in any near term risks that would have come out of this event. But yes, we have come back into the green. In fact, the mid cap end of the markets is doing extremely well, 1.5% gain when you look at the mid cap index as of now. And the good part is that foreign investors have been pumping in money in the Indian markets. And one key question that I have asked experts since morning is that whether or not this would reverse the course or would deter FIIs from pumping in more money into the Indian markets. The answer has been no, because this is an event which the market was already anticipating in wake of the ghastly terror attack in Pahalgam. But let's bring on board our next guest for today then without any delay and ask him his views as to where the markets are headed, at least in the short term. Joining me is Pramod Gubbi, co-founder of Marcellus Investment Managers. Pramod, great to be chatting with you this afternoon. Something that the market was really anticipating, right, in the run-up or ever since the April 22 attack happened. But now that, the retaliation has come by and it has been de-escalatory in nature, do you think the market has digested any kind of, risks emanating from this event? Do you think we are done in terms of consolidation for now?
Think anybody can say with any degree of confidence what the market is expecting or how much it is digested. That is the nature of the markets in the short run. They tend to be very difficult to predict. But you're right, to the extent that the Indian government had been guiding towards a retaliatory action, this was in some ways anticipated. What still remains to be seen is whether this escalates from here. Hopefully, the events over the last 10 years where we've had two other incidences which haven't escalated should give us some comfort. But having said that, I think it remains an uncertain situation. To that extent, the only thing investors can do is be disciplined about asset allocation. It is the best risk management tool available for investors. From a fund manager's perspective, be disciplined about valuations and margins of safety, which sort of create room for any sort of uncertain events, which is inherent in terms of when we're talking about the future.
Sure, Pramod, but the market seems to be focusing in on other global developments in terms of the FTA that has been signed with UK, and of course also the fact that we are very close to inking a trade deal with US as well. There are of course talks between US and China that's going to take place this week itself, formal talks between the two nations. But my question really is in terms of foreign flows. Despite the tensions between India and Pakistan, foreign investors have remained net buyers. In fact, even in in the futures, index futures, they have been going long. Do you think that will remain the case, and they will focus on the long-term story rather than short-term volatility?
So I think we tend to look at foreign investors as a sort of a monolithic block. They come in various shapes and forms. Obviously, the flows that we have seen so far is more driven by short-term investors, clearly driven by the drop in the dollar index. And historically, that's been a very strong correlation in terms of flows into emerging markets in general, and we are an emerging market, so we've benefited from the drop in the dollar index through the FI flows. Having said that, even from a long-term perspective, I reckon given how India stands out in this whole tariff issue as a net beneficiary, I wouldn't be surprised if long-term allocators to India are also looking at it with a structurally positive bent of mind. But those things don't move very quickly. I mean, these are allocators who perhaps allocate for the next decade. They'll take their time. My interactions with them in the past has suggested that they like the stronger macroeconomic fundamentals that India has to offer relative to most emerging markets. Their only issue has been around valuations, which we all know, partly justified by these strong macroeconomic fundamentals. But at the end of the day, you also need margin of safety in what looks like an inherently uncertain world, whether from a geopolitical perspective, whether from a global trade perspective. And mind you, we're still going through some sort of a slowdown, cyclical slowdown in the economy, as seen with the earnings slowdown as well. So hopefully there's going to be a more attractive entry point, which will satiate the valuation concerns of these investors. But there's absolutely no doubt that there is clearly a view that India is structurally positive from macroeconomic perspective. We only hope that it was a little bit cheaper from a valuation standpoint.
Right. If there's a thaw in relations between US and China, do you think money flowing back into US and China, could that be a near-term risk for India?
I mean, unlikely, I think, given the events of the last few weeks, few months, suggest that this whole thing about American exceptionalism has been called to doubt. Even if the current dispensation would change in 3 years' time, given what investors were thinking that, look, we're making so much money in America, why even bother about thinking of emerging markets? That might be called to question because America hasn't really done itself any good by creating this uncertainty. To that extent, I don't think this will reverse so quickly that long-term allocators will say we're happy with all our money back in America again. Similarly with China, clearly the Chinese economy itself is going through its own challenges given the property crash. Consumption is still weak. And with this whole tariffs thing, clearly China would be at the losing end. To that extent, I think India still stands out, except for the valuation piece. I think I would expect long-term allocators to look at India with a more favorable bent of mind, even if you were to address the tariff issue in the short term.
Pramod, how are you currently balancing out cash versus equity allocation across your portfolios, especially in times where geopolitical tensions, are not just limited to India and Pakistan? We're seeing wars in different parts of the globe as well, right? And also the changing world order. How much cash are you guys sitting on, and how much of equity allocation are you looking at right now?
Well, in our large cap and flexi cap portfolios, we are more fully invested. We have the ability to look at bottom up and valuation comfort considering long-term fundamentals. Whereas in our small and mid-cap portfolios, there's the other consideration to take in, which is liquidity. Liquidity tends to be an important consideration, especially in small and mid-cap. And given that small and mid-cap are still fairly punchy in terms of valuations, we don't have that comfort to be fully invested. So it's a little bit of a horses for courses strategies. Small and mid cap, we do have healthy cash levels, whereas in our other strategies, we're fully invested.
All right, one question on the Fed meet as well. We will have the Fed decision later tonight. Of course, there are very remote chances of a rate cut today. But going forward, what are your expectations from the Fed? Would you expect one as soon as June?
Well, I mean, depends on how this whole tariff thing plays out. On the one hand, tariffs, at least in the short term, are inflationary before it starts hurting growth. On the other hand, we've had pretty decent numbers on the employment side in the US. It doesn't suggest that there is a dire need to cut rates and boost growth. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fed takes a more considered decision. Wait and watch mode. Let's see how the tariffs pan out. Let's see how it affects inflation, because that's the biggest concern. It'll be very unlikely that they'll go ahead with a rate cut if the tariff situation doesn't abate and starts feeding into domestic inflation there. And like I said, employment numbers are pretty healthy even now. So to that extent, it doesn't suggest that on balance between growth and inflation, the Fed will take a call to cut rates. I wouldn't be surprised if the rate cut gets pushed beyond June as well. But having said that, you'll have to wait and watch how the tariff things plays out.
How should a well-diversified portfolio really look like right now in terms of asset allocation? Pramod, any thoughts? Given the fact that gold has, of course, seen a record run, and there were some reports saying that gold could touch somewhere around $7,000 to $8,000 by 2028. In uncertain times, in volatile times, how much of a portfolio allocation should be done towards gold? And in terms of portfolio diversification, what would your advice be?
Well, I'm not a big fan of timing your allocation towards certain assets based on a specific view. I think asset allocation should be driven off your personal goals as well as your risk appetite. Basis that the only change you make is rebalance it every now and then, I would say on an annual basis, to reflect the relative movements of different asset classes. For example, the fact that, assuming that you were well diversified, say a year ago, I presume in your portfolio, your gold allocation would have gone up significantly greater than what it was a year ago. To that extent, the right thing to do from a disciplined perspective, a systematic perspective, is to rebalance your gold allocation back to your strategic allocation levels. That takes away the need to time the market. And to that extent, given the uncertainty that we've seen in the markets, reinforces the point that we can't really take a very strong view about the future and base our investment decisions on that. You'd rather be more disciplined, because at the end of the day, most of our goals are long-term. Diversification does help in terms of reducing risk, but coupled with systematic rebalancing on a periodic basis, it can even give you lower risk without having to compromise on returns. So I would say go back to the drawing board. If you haven't done your asset allocation, build a diversified portfolio, be disciplined in terms of allocating incremental assets, rather than trying to be too cute in terms of timing certain asset class movements.
Of course, difficult to really time the market. But if I talk to you, or if I ask you about a theme for the next couple of years, would you look at defense manufacturing once again? Of course, we did see government spending slow down in election year last year, but defense stocks also saw a good correction. But now they have seen some bit of resurgence in the last 1 month, although a lot of experts have flagged off valuation discomfort when it comes to defense. But consumption has its own issues, right? Urban consumption yet to pick up, although rural is expected to do well. So if there's a toss-up between manufacturing and consumption, which one would you choose as a theme for the next couple of years?
A tough question. We are more bottom-up investors as it is. We look at specific stocks. We perhaps take the macro as an input into assessment of future cash flows of a particular business, and then use that to assess the intrinsic value of the firm. Beyond that, the macro is less relevant for us. Having said that, I think given the developments on the geopolitical side, on the global trade side, Indian manufacturing by itself should be a beneficiary. It's not just about defense. There are a whole host of opportunities that can come up India's way. And we are trying to factor that into the businesses that we like. Which one of those businesses can benefit from this development? Does that mean that the top line growth we had factored in for those businesses will have to be upgraded? And therefore, what does it mean for valuations and so on? I would keep a keen eye on manufacturing in general, whether it's defense, export oriented in terms of chemicals, textiles, and so on. We should be open to looking at re-looking at our estimates and valuations on that sector. On consumption, I reckon there's still very few pockets of opportunity. Rural is recovering from a macro thematic perspective, but there again, valuations don't seem to give our comfort. But the biggest concern for us from a consumption perspective has been, structural derating, given that moats have become weaker. Both in terms of brand and distribution, which are very strong moats for most consumer businesses. The development of digital marketing has meant that you can launch a D2C brand with very little advertising dollars compared to what was required, say, a decade ago. Similarly, from a distribution perspective, I can put up a D2C brand overnight without having to build the entire warehouse and supply chain across the country. Just put it up on e-commerce and quick commerce channels or 3PL logistics. And therefore, the entry barriers have been lowered and valuation should reflect those. I don't think that the market is looking at consumer businesses like that. Within the broader consumer space, of course, there are business models which are much more immune to these disruptions. They have shown the resilience, and those are some businesses that we like.
All right. Crude has also emerged as a big tailwind, when it comes to the Indian economy. What are the crude-related, stories that you would look at? Paints, for instance, has its own competition concerns. So which would you look at, OMCs or any other crude-related themes right now?
Well, like I said, most of the macro tends to be an incremental input into our assessment of the end of the day, the value of the firm. Crude tends to be very volatile. The currency as well tends to be very volatile. To that extent, you can't make long-term estimates basis short-term movements. If you do think that crude is going to be at fairly muted levels in long-term perspective. We are not commodity experts to take that call, but that'll definitely benefit firms at the margin in terms of reducing input costs. Those who are consumers of crude will definitely benefit in terms of adding a few percentage points in terms of margins. But that cannot be a structural reason into buying businesses, because this can reverse very quickly, particularly given the geopolitical situation we're facing. You can't really make a long-term investment decision basis the movements of crude in the short run.
Pramod, before I let you go, since we are talking, let's also talk about PSU banks. Earnings have disappointed thus far. You had SBI, flagging off margin concerns, cutting guidance in terms of loan growth as well. Bank of Baroda as well. Rate cut cycle is, has started in India, and we are looking at more rate cuts from the RBI. Which makes banks vulnerable in terms of margins. But would you look at private banks as a play and avoid PSU banks completely in the wake of the recent commentary coming in from some of the managements?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have been quite positive on private sector banks and some select NBFCs over the last several months. It has done well for us. It has outperformed the broader market, helped the portfolio. It also helped the fact that given in a market where valuations were very few pockets which you could argue were attractively valued, that was one pocket. Despite the outperformance, I think it still remains in reasonably valued territory. So we remain invested in private sector financials in general. PSU banks, I think the concern has been the fact that the last few years you had some tailwind in terms of earnings growth coming from asset quality or NPA write backs, which cannot go on forever. By definition, once you've written back some of the NPAs, it cannot be a sustainable help to your earnings growth. Going forward, I reckon it'll be more normalized, and to that extent, given the asset quality, preference within private sector banks, we'll always be biased towards private sector banks against public sector banks.
All right, that's the call from Pramod Gubbi. Pramod, always a pleasure chatting with you, and good to get your thoughts in on such a momentous day here. Look forward to more interactions in the future as well on Money Control.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, on that note, let's quickly take a look at the market then. We are, trading flat at the current juncture with a negative bias, although, but mid caps continue to show strength. 1% gain on the Nifty mid cap index. Remember, we did start, with a gap down in a knee-jerk reaction to the strike against Pakistan, but we did recover pretty smartly from the opening lows. In fact, the Nifty is around that 24,350 mark. No panic selling in the market because the markets were anticipating a retaliatory strike by the Indian government, in the aftermath of the Pahalgam terror attacks. So yes, we are a little volatile, yes, but nothing to really worry about. And going forward, we'll have to see what measures, or if Pakistan takes any retaliatory measures. If it gets escalated, there could be some bit of risk emerging for the Indian markets, but in the medium to long term, the story is intact. That's the word coming in from all the experts that I've been speaking to since morning. Let's also take a look at some of the movers then. We had the UK, India FTA as well, and the market is focusing more on that because you are seeing stocks, like Tata Motors, emerging as top gainers. 5% gain on Tata Motors. Even the export-oriented stocks like Gokuldas Exports are fairly active in trade. Just taking stock of some of the other movers: Titan, Coal India, Shriram Finance, Bajaj Finance, SBI Life, Geo Financial. These are some of the movers at the current juncture. On the flip side, you have pharma and technology names under pressure. Even FMCG, that managed to hold its head yesterday, has succumbed to some bit of selling pressure. So Sun Pharma top Nifty laggard, HCL Tech, Grasim, ITC, Asian Paints, Nestle, Tata Consumer. As you can see, most of these consumer names are under selling pressure. In terms of the result reactions, I want to just point out that stocks like BSE and Paytm are doing exceptionally well because Paytm is close to profitability. So that stock is up 8%. BSE multifold jump in profit. So 8%, 9% kind of gain on BSE as well. But let me check if we have our next guest with us on board. Joining in, Lakshmi Iyer, of Kotak Alternate Asset Managers, joining in then. Lakshmi, hi, lovely chatting with you. Let me first begin by asking you, how do you assess the market's reaction to the Sindur operation, and what about the rupee movement? Any concerns on the money market front in particular?
Yeah, so hi. So typically, if the markets was not so evolved or they wouldn't have built in some of these expectations, then Project Sindur would have led to a Kesari 2 kind of a reaction. The good part is that bulk of the expectations were already kind of getting baked into the prices, and in some sense, I would also say that the magnitude is what the markets would want to assess rather than reacting to a particular action. I think that is what is very critical. And I think similar is, or ditto is true for the rupee, where up until now it has been behaving itself, and even the yields have not really seen too much of a movement. So at best, I would say for now it's a muted reaction. But the critical thing, as you also rightly alluded to earlier, is how is it going to be incrementally panning out, and that will be purely basis action reactions coming on the geopolitical front.
Okay then, okay. Lakshmi, trust you to get in a Bollywood connection here as well, reaction to Kesari too. But let's talk about the other major risks then, earnings and Fed. What do you, what's the view, of the past response to escalatory action? Is that the conflict really gets contained? Does the thesis continue to hold, given that today's fall is very measured? So going forward, could earnings and what the Fed does emerge as the major concerns going forward?
I would say both of them would be equally critical. And if we dig into history, the past such kind of attacks that we have seen, specifically whether it was Uri or it was Kargil or Pulwama, the drawdowns have not been very significant, and obviously the bounce back also has been pretty sharp. But definitely the resilience is also a function of where we are seeing FPIs pumping in money. They have been net buyers in April. Up until now, they have been net buyers. And also there is resilience of retail flows. Now, all this basically also ties in with a favorable macro. And definitely what Fed does will be critical, but doesn't look like this month they might relent with a rate cut. But Indian dynamics definitely warrant further rate cuts in the months ahead. And I think that seems to be what markets are hinging towards. Earnings, definitely, we are almost through with the previous quarter's earnings season. It's been a mixed bag. It's been a little bit of a disappointment in certain sectors. So I'd say, therefore, the inward-facing sectors where the resilience is a bigger factor compared to the external-facing sectors, I think those are the kind of plays that markets will incrementally start focusing on.
Let's talk about the system liquidity as well. Lakshmi, the RBI has taken quite a few measures on the liquidity front, with the announcement of OMOs. Now, the dividend also coming in. Do you think that the liquidity will be in surplus in the next 2-3 months? The durable liquidity, so to say, will be in surplus permanently post that, at least for the next couple of years going forward?
Absolutely. Looks like that we are slowly and steadily headed towards the 1% of net demand and time liabilities, which was up until now closer to 0.5, 0.6%. And that seems to be a fairly stated objective that we heard even after the monetary policy, which was tabled last month. So looks like that which was much required as a respite, not only to pump prime the credit lending cycle in the banking system, but also to ensure that it forms a very solid anchor, especially to the short end of the yield curve, which otherwise had actually flattened out or maybe marginally inverted. So I think both of these objectives are being achieved. The dividend and the consistency in the RBI bond purchases, I think all are a telltale sign which is indicating exactly that.
Right, Lakshmi, I want to get in your thoughts on the dollar trajectory as well. It had hit a record low against the Taiwanese dollar, right? If there is a trade deal between US and Taiwan, how do you see that equation panning out, and how would that impact the global trade order?
So currently our view is, I couldn't hear you clearly, but I'm on the dollar trajectory. If I were to say that we have seen from the peaks of 109, we saw it come down almost 9-10 big figures. It's showing signs of stabilizing, no doubt about it. And that is also reflected if you see in the dollar rupee movement. But our view is that till such time that we just have a pause right now on the Liberation Day tariff announcements. Till such time we get more clarity, there is just a breather right now on the dollar front. Probably the weakening trend could continue for a bit more. And if that gets accentuated by potential rate cuts by the Fed, then some more downside on the dollar possibly is on the anvil. But as I mentioned to you, after a very drastic fall up until now, it's only fair that the dollar takes a little bit of a breather, which is what it's doing right now.
Right. My question to you is actually the dollar and Taiwanese dollar duo. Who really benefits from that, and how does it look like panning out from here?
So that also, as I said, we've already seen a massive depreciation right now, and looks like even at that on that front also we are seeing a little bit of a respite. Eventually, the US dollar will stand to gain, given the fact that it still controls the world's reserve currency. But the near-term pain to our mind will have to continue to linger on.
Okay, the near term pain will continue to linger on, but in terms of foreign flows, do you think this whole retaliation by the Indian government, will that reverse the course? Does that have the wherewithal to reverse the course? Because despite what's been happening ever since the 22nd April attack took place, FII flows have been consistently flowing into Indian markets. That hasn't really deterred the foreign investors. So would you look at this event also in the same light and say that foreign investors will now focus more on the long term cues rather than looking at short term volatility?
Well, I won't rule out some bit of profit taking, to be very honest, because anything which is seen from a lens or a geography away from India, and as asset allocators or as investors, some bit of prudence will demand that they take some money off the table. And hence, the next couple of months are going to be slightly more choppy innings as far as markets go. Valuations also have run up a little bit from where we saw from the trough corrections and the valuations coming back to long-term averages. So I think in the near term, given that they have seen a consistent phase of buying, some bit of profit taking may not be ruled out. But are we likely to see an en masse sort of an exit? Well, that is a very, very low probability to our mind, given that fundamentals. And when you are looking 1 year hence, those numbers still look fairly palatable for an investor, especially foreign investors, to take such a drastic measure.
All right. We also have my colleague Lavisha joining in the interview. Lavisha, over to you.
I want to understand, since there's a lot of uncertainty
Lavisha,
at
I'm
this
not
point
able
of
to
time.
hear you.
Okay, there's some audio glitch right now then. All right.
Okay. In your view, Lakshmi, hi, Nandita, speaking to you again. According to you, are we looking at another 50 basis point rate cut by the RBI? Because the rate cut cycle has already started. We've had the RBI also changing the stance to accommodative. We've already had 2 rate cuts this fiscal. Going forward, would you work with another 50 basis point for the rest of the fiscal, or do you think it could be a little more measured, 25 basis point? What is your assessment?
Well, looks like a cumulative of 50 basis points from these levels by the year end look pretty realistic, given the fact, again, 2 critical factors. You look at inflation, you look at crude oil prices. We are price takers for crude. Barring last night's movement where we've seen a little bit of an uptick, trajectory-wise, crude is seemingly headed lower, and that will favorably augur well for inflation, which is the headline inflation in India. And I think if you have a real rate probably in the vicinity of around 2% or thereabouts, even that would suggest that we have scope or headroom to lower the repo rate. So I think 5.5%, which means 2 more quarter percentage point cuts, seem to be a fair assumption at this point in time.
What about crude, Lakshmi? That tailwind has emerged for the Indian economy. Brent is down to $62 now, but a lot of these global brokerages have cut their targets to 58, 55. What is the assumption you're working with when it comes to Brent?
So as I mentioned to you, our view on crude remains to be bearish. We could probably, notwithstanding, as I mentioned, what has happened in the last couple of sessions, the view remains that crude could continue to have its southward march. And that definitely means, a good amount of positive news, both from our fiscal metrics and, of course, the elbow room for the central banker to recognize and transmit that in the form of benchmark rate cuts. So I think that is going to be, of course, it always remains to be a joker in the pack. But today, this joker is dancing for the Indian circus.
All right, the Joker is dancing. Lakshmi, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, and all these quips makes the interview even more interesting. But as we wrap, any thoughts on where the Indian economy is headed? In terms of the GDP growth, we've had I think IMF slashing GDP forecast to 6.3%. Any thoughts as to how we are placed for FY26?
So these numbers, give or take, 10, 20, 30 basis points, I think look to be fairly achievable to our mind. We also need to understand up until now what has transpired, clearly demonstrate the resilience that we have displayed as a nation, and how inward looking sectors definitely have contributed. And given that assumption, and you extrapolate that into the next year, whether it's FY26, which is there, or FY 2027, if earnings growth continue to remain in that, I would say low teens sort of a territory, I think the growth factors that we have assumed and budgeted for seem to be fairly achievable. One caveat here, of course, is that one does not really know fully well how whether or not this issue right now will get into a full blown war kind of a situation. But for that, as I would say, there's always a ceteris paribus. These numbers, anything even around 6% region from a GDP growth perspective, still means we are growing almost 100% more than the aggregate which IMF has forecasted for the globe. So I think we're pretty good on that front, and we should be okay.
All right, and since we are, chatting about various asset classes, we cannot not talk about gold, Lakshmi. It's been shining bright. Good hedge in terms of in times of market volatility, but it has run up quite a bit. Some reports say it could hit $8,000 by 2028. So, in that sense, should one look at the increasing exposure now? Is it a buy on dip?
It certainly is a buy on dip. So I think gold has effectively raided almost every other asset class to become consistently the student of the year after year. Even year to date, if you see it, it is still retaining its title. But on a more serious view going forward, I think buy on dips is a very fair strategy, given that Indian demand for gold is fairly elastic. When the price point jumps, you actually see scrap sales going up. So I think looking forward, given the fact that this is truly, I would say, the last person standing in your portfolio from an asset class appeal perspective, it's okay to position yourself for a bullish outcome, but buy the dips should clearly be the mantra.
All right, buy the dip should be clearly the mantra when it comes to gold. Lakshmi, lovely chatting with you. Always a twist in your interviews, and I really enjoy, most of the conversations we have. I look forward to having you on our morning show as well, one of these days on Opening Bell. So we'll touch base with you on that as well. Thanks a lot for joining in.
Thank you.
Well, with that, of course, the markets are where they were just a while ago, extremely flat, 24,360 on the Nifty, and mid-cap index showing strength, 1.5% gain coming in there. But let's quickly cut across to CNN News 18 then, where we are getting you live coverage on the retaliatory strikes by the Indian government on Pakistan. Let's cut across.
Confident because Asim Munir is the first general, an army chief, who has used Jinnah's language. You remember on April 16th, when he drew a distinction between Hindus and Muslims. So, let me sum up. One, I think we did the right thing. I think Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister and the Defence Forces need to be congratulated for the step they took. I think the nation is fully behind them. I don't think that there will be any fractures in the political class on this action. There can't be, because Pahalgam was completely unacceptable. Having said all this, I do think it will be prudent on our part, and I'm confident that our armed forces and our political establishment has a full knowledge and understanding of the Pakistani mind, the military mind, and how it works. And therefore, our people would be fully prepared for anything that the Pakistanis seek to throw at us. I feel that they will. I hope I'm wrong.
All right, Ambassador Kaju, as always, a pleasure speaking with you for your time and your erudite perspective. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to move on to another piece of breaking news. So, lots of support coming by way of India from many different countries around the world. Israel, of course, the Israeli ambassador had expressed his support for India and for the Indian operation that happened across Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Now, the Consul General Kobi Shoshani in Midwest India, he has also taken to Twitter and he has said, it's a clear message from India to the rest of the world. Also from your friend Israel, it is essential to send a message to the terrorists that this was an act of self-defense and I'm very proud of this operation. Let's listen in to Kobi Shoshani, who is the Consul General of Israel here in India.
It's a very clear message from India to the rest of the world, definitely from your friend Israel. This is something which is essential to send a message to the terrorists. That was an action of self-defense, and I'm very proud of this operation. Then the symbolic name that I understand that unofficially or officially, I don't know, Prime Minister Modi ji gave the name. It's touched my heart as well. It's a very sophisticated name, and it's symbolized and inspiring as well. And Sindur, it's a really dramatic name and very right to the point.
All right, I want to go across to Siddhant Mishra for more details on this. So you had the ambassador some time back and now the Consul General also echoing what the ambassador said. Israel, one of the first countries to come out and openly and unequivocally support India and in its right to defend itself and to take this action against these terrorists.
Well, that's right, Zaka. In fact, Israel has been very consistent with its position, and this is not the first time. In fact, before this also, during Kargil, there was help which came from Israel, and this time around again, they have been really consistent in their position when it comes to supporting India. In fact, there have been multiple statements coming from Israel and also their representative there in India. In fact, this morning, Ruben Ezer was the first ambassador here in New Delhi, perhaps to appreciate what India did after India announced Operation Sindoor. And in fact, now the Consulate General of Israel in Mumbai is perhaps has come up with an appreciation tweet for the Indian government. So it talks about the relations between the two countries, and also, Zaka, let's not forget that Pahalgam happened almost from the lines of 7th October. So Israel very well understands the pain of such terror attacks, perhaps such heinous, dastardly terror attacks, and this is one of the reasons that Israel is backing India fully in this fight against terrorism.
All right, Siddhant, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. You're getting more breaking news, and I need to go to that. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has called for an urgent meeting with all those states which share a border with Pakistan as well as with Nepal. The chief ministers, the DGPs, The chief secretaries of all of these states, including Jammu and Kashmir, the Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir will also be called for this meeting. These states include Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Sikkim, West Bengal, and the Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh. Arunima has more details on this. So this is in response to Operation Sindoor and trying to potentially anticipate for or prepare for any kind of retaliation by Pakistan. When is this meeting going to happen? You know, who all are going to be attending, Arunima, this meeting? So Arunima reporting for us that
All right, we are back with markets at this point of time, and yes, the markets have been exhibiting resilience and they have been unflinched by what India has struck into the retaliatory attacks on Pakistan. At present, we can see that Sensex is down about 98 points and Nifty is also well below that 24,400 mark, but still above that 24,350 mark. But on that note, let's quickly get on board with our next guest of the show. We have Ruchit Jain joining us of Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Ruchit, good afternoon. Ruchit, good afternoon. You know, we have been seeing that the markets have been in a consolidation zone for the past 6 to 7 days, and now that this terrorist response from India has been seen, what do you see the way ahead for the markets, and of course from the Nifty levels in particular as well?
Yeah, so we have seen that since last few days, the markets have seen some consolidation within the range where 24,550 has been acting as the resistance, 24,500 to 24,600 range. But on the low side, we have not even breached that support of 24,200 to 24,000. So we believe that this is more signs of a consolidation of the index where a time-wise correction is going on post the recent up move that we had seen since the second half of April. And the overall market breadth, I think it's more even, Steven. So we are of the opinion that market would continue to see some more time-wise correction and trade within a range rather than showing any kind of directional move on the either side. And it would be more of a market where a sector-specific or a stock-specific approach should be taken. So 24,000 to 24,550, 24,600. I think this is the range where we expect some sideways move to be there for the near term.
Okay, sideways move, that's what you expect. But Ruchit, you know, Bank Nifty index, that is also in the green at this point of time, though it is flat in the green at this point of time. But what are you expecting from the Bank Nifty levels? We are seeing some good traction in HDFC Bank and the likes of, ICICI Bank is also doing well in today's trading session. So what are you anticipating on Bank Nifty index going ahead? Because you said that volatility is expected to ensue in the markets, but as the street expects that Bank Nifty holds to the outperformance of Nifty going ahead. So do you expect that to be wobbly too?
So the broader trend, no doubt remains positive for the banking space. Last 1.5 months, 2 months, the rally that we have seen was led by the banking and the NBFC space, especially the private banks and the NBFC space. But since we have already seen a good run up, some profit booking has been witnessed in last few trading sessions, and major support for the banking index now would come around 53,000, 53,300 range. So I think that this is one space where if you are looking from a mid-term perspective, then a buy and dip approach could be kept. In case if we say get some correction or some dip near that 53,000, 53,300 range, then the risk reward ratio would become favorable to take some contra buys over there. So one should keep a buy and dip approach. Any declines towards 53,000 should be a good opportunity to go long on the Bank Nifty or the banking stocks.
Okay. What about the defense space, Ruchit? Because that has been one of the, under the investors' radar, given the geopolitical tensions are on the fore. We are seeing in the initial early trades, we saw that HAL, BDL, all the likes of even Bharat Electronics, all of them seeing good traction. But right now, we can see a little bit of profit booking. HAL with seeing a cut of about 0.9%. BDL also seeing a cut of about 4% or so, and BEL also down about more than 0.5%. Where do you stand on defense stocks? Do you still find valuations attractive going ahead, or how do you see the fundamentals?
So we have seen some run up in last 1.5 to 2 months in the defense space. Today, although some profit booking has been seen, but does not seem that we are finished with the uptrend yet in many of the defense names, such as HAL is there, or even Mazgaon Dock is there, where a good relative outperformance was seen over last few weeks. So I think it's just a profit booking, regular profit booking which we are witnessing as of now in today's trading session. But the broader trends for the defense space still remains positive, and we believe that any kind of dips when comes, that should be a good buying opportunity. Especially names such as within the defense space, names such as HL is there, Mazgaon Dock is there, or even solar industries within this entire space, which has shown a good relative outperformance from the sector, should do well going ahead. So more of a buy and dip approach, would be recommended to do for the defense sector.
Okay. And how are you placed on Tata Motors stock? Good traction today. One of the top nifty gainers after shareholders nod to demerge the CV business. Do you expect some turnaround in Tata Motors stock going ahead? Because so far everywhere the street has been quite bearish on the counter.
I think somewhere the price-wise corrective phase seems to be behind for the stock, although we have seen a long phase of underperformance in Tata Motors. But now we are witnessing some volume traction happening, and today post that news of UK FTA. So I think we are clearly witnessing a price up move supported by very good volumes, which indicates a good buying interest coming in the stock. It may be a slow and gradual recovery for the stock going ahead, but at least the downside seems to be limited from here on. So I think if one has a bit mid-term perspective, then these are good levels where one can look to accumulate Tata Motors.
Okay, good levels to accumulate Tata Motors. Let's talk about another stock in focus, that is your Paytm, because that stock also received good traction after it came out with its Q4 numbers, where we saw that the revenue has surged about, revenue did fall about 11% from last year. On the other hand, if you look at on the profitability levels, that is also showing a bit of good traction. Where do you stand on Paytm going ahead, Ruchit, on the counter?
So I think the stock should see some more consolidation going ahead. We are not expecting any run-up move going ahead in Paytm. 950 remains a crucial resistance for the stock, which has not been surpassed in some time. And on the lower side, 750 is a good support where the 200 DMA for the stock is placed. So I think this is a broad range in which we could see a continuation of some consolidation for Paytm.
Okay, all right. Let's take another stock in focus, that is your Oil India, because the recent news has come out that the board has approved about 18% equity participation in the joint venture for the setting up of new ammonia urea complex. Oil India, how does the stock look like, Ruchit, and of course all the entire energy space, given that Brent crude is also hit below that $60 per barrel?
I think Oil India also doesn't seem that we would see any uptrend anytime soon. Some sort of consolidation will be there, but yes, the Nifty Energy Index definitely seems quite positive over here. Recently, we have seen that from the sector, post that Reliance Industries result, we have seen a good traction coming in over there. Even the OMCs are doing well. As the falling crude oil as well as appreciating INR, benefits the OMCs from both the ways. So, rather than the upstream companies, I think we are more positive on OMCs for now, where the kind of movement that we have seen in IOC also post the numbers indicates a good fresh buying interest coming over there. So I think within the entire energy space, we prefer going long move with the OMCs such as IOC and HPCL, where any kind of dips should be used as buying opportunities. Even at current levels, one can look to accumulate these stocks.
Okay, even at current levels, you expect them to accumulate. But let's talk a little bit about aviation stocks also, because Indigo is down about 1% at this point of time. On the other hand, if you look at SpiceJet, that is also, seeing a little bit of a sentimental down at this point. We had certain government notification on the airspace restrictions. Over about 165 Indigo flights from multiple airports have been cancelled until 5:30. Where do you stand on the Indigo, and of course the geopolitical concerns that have been cropping up on the entire space? Do you expect the sentimental reaction to play out for the next couple of sessions, Ruchit?
So I think if you look at recently, I think because of these news flows, we did have some volatility in the stock going at, but broadly, I think this falling crude oil theme also is positive for Indigo. So maybe just a short-term reactions could be there with Indigo, but overall trend still continues to remain positive. So any long positions, if there are from a bit mid-term perspective, investors can continue to hold on to the long positions in Indigo.
Okay, all right. Let's talk a little bit about broader end of the markets also, because that has been outperforming the headline indices. Both the mid-cap and small caps are up to about 1% each. So where do you stand on mid-cap and small-cap space? Do you still believe that they are trading at premium valuations and this is just a technical bounce at a time when the markets have been volatile? Or how do you see this space?
So within the mid-cap and the small-cap space, one should keep more of a stock-specific approach, not expecting the entire basket to do well as a whole. no, we have already seen a good no, pullback move from the lows, and I think no, this would be a segment where we do not expect the run-up rally towards its previous all-time highs anytime soon. So I think we have already seen that pullback move, but now it's time for a consolidation for the mid cap and the small cap. So some consolidation should be seen, but yes, one can be very stock specific within this space.
Okay. Ruchit, any times of uncertainty, given that the markets have been witnessing today itself, defensive stocks always, are on investors' radar also. But today, FMCG and pharma stocks, both of them are seeing, downtake. FMCG index about 6% down, 0.6% down, and pharma index also, nearly 0.5% down at this point of time. Where do you stand on both of these counters? Do you believe that they have seen already a good amount of run-up and this is bound to follow?
No, I think no, FMCG could see some more pullback move from current levels. Specific stocks such as Marico is there, Britannia is there. They have been doing well, price up move supported by good volumes. There is some relative outperformance is also there. So I think selective stocks can continue to do well within the FMCG space. Even pharma, I think, has not seen any kind of trended phase recently because of the uncertainty over tariffs in the US. But I think certain stocks such as Glenmark Pharma or even Sun Pharma within the large cap space seems to have limited downside from current levels. So pharma, I think once that clarity comes out with related to the tariffs in the US on the pharma products, I think then one can see some momentum coming in the pharma name. So one can keep this on the watch list and keep a wait and watch approach within the pharma space.
Okay, wait and watch on the pharma space. What about the Nifty Metal pack? Because that is shining in the trade in today's trading session. Nifty Metal is about 1% uptick we are seeing on the Nifty Metal index. Any particular picks that you are eyeing out from the space?
So for now, I think it's a pullback move which we are seeing in the metal space. I think selective steel names are looking good, such as Tata Steel, where price up moves have surpassed the immediate its 200 DMA resistance, and so I think selective stocks from the metal space can do well, but not on the sector as a whole. There are no signs of any significant uptrend. Tata Steel, I think, should be preferred within the metal space, where a good price volume pattern is seen.
Okay, Tata Steel. Let's talk about KEI Industries, because that stock is seeing a good traction. What is your view on the entire wires and cables businesses? Because earlier we saw that Polycab also reacted well to its Q4 results, and today also we are seeing good traction in KEI Industry, about 4% uptake. Anything that you like from the space?
The reaction post the numbers have been good. So Polycab is one stock where I think here the price wise corrective phase has already been there before the numbers, and we have also got good numbers in this stock. So this could lead to some positive momentum positionally on the Polycab. So Polycab, KEI, both in fact on the from a chart structure looks that the downside could be limited from here on, as prices have already seen a corrective phase ahead of the numbers, and the numbers are good, so this should result into a good buying interest within the wire names, so in stocks such as Polycab and KEI.
Okay, all right. Let's talk a little bit about retail stocks also, because today DMart did face a downgrade by HSBC following its Q4 results, and VMart Retail is also, it is however shining in the trade with about 5% uptick in today's trading session. How do you view the entire retail stocks, and where do you see value at this point of time?
No, not expecting any no significant uptrend from current levels. There are no such signs of any trended phase coming in the retail sector as a whole. So maybe some more consolidation could be there in the sector.
Just cut to Parikshit from CNBC. He's giving out more details on what. Okay, all right. In just a bit, we'll be switching to Parikshit from CNBC. He'll be giving out more details on what is happening on the India's military action towards Pakistan. But yes, India VIX, that has cooled off at this point of time with about 0.7% downtick that we are seeing. On the other hand, if you look at some of the sectoral indices which has been participating well in the trade, that is your Nifty Auto Index and Nifty Metal Index, like we were talking about. But Nifty Auto Index, that is soaring the trade, 1.3% uptick coming in, Ruchit. We were talking about the India-UK FTA trade deal also. We can see some sentimental reaction, but anything that you like from the space, apart from what we discussed about Tata Motors?
So one Tata Motor we have already discussed. Apart from that, TVS Motors within the two-wheeler space is looking good, where the stock has shown a good relative outperformance compared to its peers in the recent corrective phase. And also, if you look from the larger names, then M&M or Maruti has shown signs of price-wise corrective getting over. and next leg of uptrend to have started. So I think certain stocks can do well positionally. Stocks such as M&M, Maruti, TVS Motors, Tata Motors, I think these are stocks where fresh buying interest could be taken.
Okay, all right. Let's talk a bit about Nifty IT index also. What do you believe on the tariffs front, Ruchit? Nifty IT index, it's eking out very slim gains at this point of time, but majority of the management's commentary has been that they're looking out for a cautious FY26. But on the technical level, anything that you're finding good value compared to from large caps or even mid cap space?
I think we are still in a wait and watch mode on the IT space. We did see some recovery, post this announcement of tariffs getting lowered. But no, there are no signs of a sustainable up move coming in many of the heavyweights IT names. So I think first we would wait for some heavyweights to show some good signs of any kind of trend reversal, and then look for buying ideas in the mid cap and the small cap space. So for now, I think this recent up move is just seen as a pullback move. Some consolidation should happen in the IT names before resuming the broader up.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about tire stocks also, because MRF came out with its Q4 results and that was quite stellar. And even if we look at C8, that also came out with its quite positive business outlook. Where do you stand on the tire companies, Ruchit? How do you find that space?
So again, the downside seems to be limited from the tire companies over here. We have seen good buying interest in C8 also post numbers. Apollo Tires have also corrected, and in fact, this falling crude oil theme also could be could be positive for this. So I think yes, can do well. So one can focus on stocks. Just C8 is there, MRF is there, or Apollo Tires. But since the stocks have already rallied, then one should keep a buy and dip approach where any kind of decline if comes in the near future, then use that as a buying opportunity.
All right, now that we talked about this also, let's take a quick look at the markets at this point of time where we are standing at. The sell-off has extended a little bit. The Sensex is down about 100 points at this point of time. Nifty is also below that 24,400 mark. If you look at the mid-cap and small-cap indices, both of them have been quite resilient, outperforming the headline indices. So the markets have been, brushing aside any kind of fear that could prevail in the markets. But on the other hand, if you look at India Wix, that has seen a bit of a cool-off, 0.6, more than half a percent cool-off that we can see on the India Wix front. Other than that, if we look at some of the sectoral indices, earlier it was Nifty FMCG and Pharma Index which was seeing a bit of a cool-off, and right now we can see Nifty PSU banks are also seeing a bit of a slim, they have been edging marginally lower with about 0.1% cut. On the other hand, if you look at Nifty Auto Index, that is the star performer of today, given that the UK FTA, UK and India's FTA trade deal has been on the final after nearly negotiating after 2.5 years. If you look at other indices, Nifty IT Index also is supporting well in the markets, however flat in the green at this point of time. On the other hand, let's take a look at some of the top gainers and losers at this point of time on Nifty. Tata Motors soaring in the trade with about 4.5% uptick. Other than that, we can see Shriram Finance, Coal India, Titan, all of them sitting on the top gainers on the Nifty 50 index. On the other hand, like I was talking about, that the pharma index is seeing a bit of a setback in today's trading session. So Sun Pharma, one of the top Nifty losers at this point of time, seeing a cut of about 2%. Apart from that, we can see Asian Paints, Bajaj Auto seeing a cut of about 1.5 to about 2% each on that front. But let's move on and let's take one stock in focus, that is your Car Trade Tech. The stock has fallen about 8% from highs after decline in its monthly average unique visitors. Car Trade Tech, how does the stock look like on the charts, Ruchit? Where do you see any particular breakout in the horizon, or where do you see this stock on the counter? All right, we've lost Ruchit at this point of time, but let's see other stocks in focus. Right now, like I was talking about. All right, let's cut to CNN at this point of time. We have certain debates which is going on around India-Pakistan conflict. So let's cut across that.
हर्षल, जिस तरीके से ये अटैक हुआ है, ये उम्मीद थी कि रिटेलिएटिव होगा और बहुत बड़ा रिटेलिएशन होगा. तो इस अटैक को और जो कार्रवाई हुई है उसको आप किस तरह देखते हैं?
खुश हूँ कार्रवाई देख के, लेकिन इतना ही बोलूँगा कि ये इकलौती कार्रवाई नहीं होनी चाहिए. ऐसे कंटिन्यू अटैक्स उन पे होने चाहिए, तभी वो वो सुधरने वालों में से तो है नहीं, क्योंकि पहली 2 बार भी हमने उन पर अटैक किया था, मतलब रिप्लाई दिया था, खुद से अटैक नहीं किया था। तो तभी भी उन्होंने हिम्मत करी तीसरी बार अटैक करने की। तो इस बार उन पर ऐसा अटैक होना चाहिए कि चौथा अटैक करने के लिए वो बचना ही नहीं चाहिए, तभी कुछ होगा।
इस बार हर साल मल्टीपल टेरर बेस्ड कैंप पर अटैक हुआ है, जो लश्कर तोयबा हो, जैसे मोहम्मद हो, एक स्पेसिफिक टेरर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन लेवल मल्टीपल टेरर हुआ है, एक स्ट्रॉन्ग मैसेज दिया है।
स्ट्रॉन्ग मैसेज है। मैं पूरी फैमिली, मतलब मेरे मदर को भी मैंने बताया था इस बारे में रात को कि, तो वो भी हैप्पी है। मतलब अभी कैसे दुख जो है वो मतलब इंसान तो नहीं वापस आने वाला, लेकिन थोड़ा रिलीफ है कि ऐसे ही नहीं मरे, देश के लिए मरे 28 के 28 29 जितने भी लोग हैं। तो मेरे फादर भी पर्सनली खुश होते अगर किसी और पे अटैक होता, मतलब किसी और की हत्या होती और इसके जवाब में अटैक होता, तो भी मेरे फादर खुश होते, क्योंकि 2019 में जब भी पुलवामा हमने रिप्लाई दिया था तभी उन्होंने मुझे हक किया था। मुझे वो मतलब अभी रात को मैंने जब ये देखा तब मुझे वो मेमोरी याद आई थी। तो मेरे फादर भी खुश होंगे और अच्छा लग रहा है कि जस्टिस उन्होंने ट्राई कर रहे हैं। लेकिन मैं सिर्फ इतना अगेन एक और बार मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि ये एंडिंग नहीं होना चाहिए, ये बिगनिंग होना चाहिए अटैक का।
22 এপ্রিল আমার সাথে এবং যাদের সাথে হয়েছে আমাদের একটাই রিকোয়েস্ট ছিল, আমাদের জাস্টিস চাই। আর গভর্নমেন্টের থেকে আমরা যেটা চেয়েছিলাম গভর্নমেন্ট অ্যাকশন নিয়েছে। আমার গভর্নমেন্টের উপর পুরোপুরি ভরসা, পুরোপুরি বিশ্বাস। ওনারা যে অ্যাকশনটা নিয়েছে সেটা প্রপার অ্যাকশন নিয়েছে, আমি তাদের কাছে ধন্যবাদ। আমার হাজব্যান্ড এটা নিশ্চয়ই দেখছে, আর যে অপারেশন সিঁদুর লিখেছে আমার আজকে সিঁদুর তারা কেটে নিয়েছে। ভগবান আমার হাজব্যান্ডকে শান্তি দিই, আর ভবিষ্যতে যাতে কারোর কপালে সিঁদুর না যায়, এটাই গভর্নমেন্টের কাছে আমার রিকোয়েস্ট, আর কিছু না।
आज मोदी जी ने और जितने भी लोग इस ऑपरेशन में इन्वॉल्व हैं, हमारी आर्म फोर्सेस ने आज कहीं ना कहीं उन 26 लोगों की फैमिलीज को दिखा दिया है कि हम आपका बदला पर्सनल लेवल पे, हम आपके लिए खड़े होके बदला लेके वापस आए। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर नाम देके ना उन्होंने कहीं ना कहीं बहुत पर्सनल लेवल पे हमें टच किया है कि हाँ आपका सिंदूर गया था और हम जितनी 26 औरतें हैं उन सबका सिंदूर नाम देके उन्होंने यही प्रूव किया है कि दिस इज वेरी पर्सनल। एंड हम एक एक लोगों की डेथ पर्सनल लेवल पे लेके, पर्सनल तरीके से लेके उन पर अटैक करेंगे।
Indian Army, Indian Armed Forces have retaliated in a strong measure, targeting 9 terror camps with Operation Sindoor. How do you see this, sir?
Yeah, definitely it is a good step from the government of India, and Modi has done a lot of good work to control the terrorists, and they have posted army people along the border, and they are controlling all the terrorists, and they fight the hideouts of the terrorists, and really they are bringing peace to people in India.
But do you feel there is some form of retribution, some form of revenge, some form of justice for your son's unfortunate demise?
Definitely a lot of justice is there, because the army people and air force people, they have done a lot of work, and they have attacked the 9 terrorist hideouts, and they killed them. That's a good news for all the people of India, because hereafter there may not be any terrorists attacking Indian people.
The tragedy that took place there and the pain of many, do you feel this is revenge for your brother's unfortunate tragedy, sir?
See, he's not going to come back. We have lost him. He's not there. I don't know. I don't want to call it revenge. I don't want to call it anything else. I think looking from a perspective saying, how do we stop this from happening? I think there is a need for us to give an answer to a certain terror outfits in a certain way. Probably that's exactly what the government is trying to do, because some of these terror outfits only learn from such kind of retaliation. There are some people who are peace lovers, they have been advised peace, that kind of an approach has been taken. There are some people where we need to change the mindset of people as well. I think that kind of approach has been taken. So I think it's different solutions for different category of people, which is exactly what government is adopting to. Hopefully this will bring peace to the nation as well as for the neighboring nations as well.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you for staying with us here at CNN News 18 as we continue to stay on Operation Sindoor. Less than a fortnight after the brutal terror attack on the 22nd of April in Pahalgam that claimed 26 innocent civilian lives, Bharat has avenged the loss. Bharat conducted Operation Sindoor, striking 9 terror sites, 21 locations in 25 minutes, killing 17 plus terrorists. That number is much higher, but this is what's been declared officially. Jaish and Lashkar terror hotbeds have been decimated, razed to rubble. The strikes have rattled Pakistan. In a climb down, Pak Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has even said that if Bharat retreats or Bharat halts, Pakistan will show restraint. Let's try and understand this entire operation in detail. Titled Operation Sindoor, a name we are given to understand was christened by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in ode to the widows of Pahalgam. Operation Sindoor, 25 minutes, 21 hits, 9 targets. 9 targets that include Sawai Nala, Sayyidna Bilal, Maskar-e-Aqsa, Chelabandi, Abdullah bin Masood, Dulai Gari, then Habibullah, Gari Habibullah, and also Batrasi, Balakot, Oghi, Boi, Sensa, Gulpur, Kotli, Barali, Dungi, Barnala, Mehmuna Joya, Sarjal and Muridke, and last but most important, I think, that is Bahawalpur. So the Lashkar headquarters Muridke, the Jaish headquarters Bahawalpur, both in the Pak province of Punjab, targeted and razed to rubble. Now why Muridke? Let's try and understand this. Why Muridke? Well, we just got, before we explain to you, now this is the Home Minister Amit Shah who's taking a briefing. We'll check if there is any audio of this meeting and if there is any conversation that he's having. This is happening in the Home Ministry. There is a briefing going on. We'll see if they are getting, we have Govind Mohan there to the Home Minister's right, addressing the gathering and the conference. This briefing, even as Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called on the President of India, Draupadi Murmuji, to brief her on Operation Sindoor. This is a scheduled meeting, the urgent meeting that was called in by the Home Minister at 2 p.m. and he is meeting with the Chief Ministers, LGs, the elected heads and of various states and union territories, especially those along the line of control or the line of actual control and the international border, both towards our west and the east. These are states which perhaps will be asked to be in urgent preparedness for a possible impending retaliation by the Pakistanis. We'll try and understand the details and the contours of this conversation with Aruniba. This is an urgent meeting in the Union Home Ministry that is currently on, a briefing that is happening. This is the Union Home Minister Amit Shah soon after Operation Sindoor and the briefing by the...
All right, those pictures on your screens were coming in from the Home Ministry. That's Home Minister Amit Shah holding a meeting with the leaders of states and union territories to understand what the preparedness India has for a possible...
Representatives of various states, especially the Chief Minister
from,
and Chief Secretaries have been asked
from
to come,
Pakistan.
Secretaries and DGPs of the states that are bordering Pakistan and Nepal have been called on for this urgent meeting. Do we know the context, the reason why? Is this perhaps in preparedness for a possible retaliation by the enemy this evening?
Absolutely. That's the reason this meeting has been called.